What is the youngest text in the TaNaKh? Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion, and I recently posted videos talking about the oldest texts in the Bible, as well as the youngest texts in the Bible. And I had some people helpfully remind me in the comments that when I include the New Testament in the category of the Bible, I'm presupposing a Christian perspective. And they helpfully reminded me that Jewish folks also refer to the TaNaKh as the Bible. So what is the youngest text in the TaNaKh? Some people think it is Malachi. Some people think it's 2nd Chronicles. And each of these perspectives are based on the Jewish or the Christian arrangement of the texts of the Hebrew Bible. Christian arrangements place Malachi last because that segues most conveniently into the beginning of the book of Matthew. Jewish arrangements of the Hebrew Bible will place 2nd Chronicles last because that ends with the promise of restoration. Neither of these texts are likely the youngest text of the TaNaKh, though. Both of them probably date to the late 5th or 4th centuries BCE. And there are other texts that probably date to around that time period as well, such as Ezra, Nehemiah, or Esther. But we also have a text that's probably 3rd century CE. That might be Ecclesiastes. But there's an even younger text. There's a text that the majority of scholars agree was mostly written and compiled in the 2nd century BCE, and that would be the book of Daniel. While parts of it include court tales that may come from the 5th or 4th or 3rd centuries BCE, most scholars agree that its final arrangements and the apocalyptic sections of the text date to the early 160s BCE. Now, some people will point out, well, we have fragments of Daniel from Qumran. Shouldn't it have been written long before that in order for manuscripts to have made their way to Qumran? Not necessarily. And there are scholars who think that some of the fragments that we have of Daniel at Qumran may have predated the final editorial stage of the book's composition. In fact, there may be some texts at Qumran that were circulated with the rest of the text of Daniel, but were omitted from the final editorial stage. In other words, we might have versions of Daniel that predate its finalization. And some of those texts may have been left out, like references to Nabonidus that we have in some of the manuscripts from Qumran. So most critical scholars date the book of Daniel to the early 160s BCE, which would make Daniel the youngest or the most recently composed text of the TaNaKh. And the fit for this video has been Superman.